So welcome back. In this session, we shall start the second chapter in second year computer science. Name of the chapter is Concepts of Object-Oriented Programming. So this chapter brings the details of object-oriented programming, and this concept, this paradigm, this object-oriented programming concept is compared with some previously used programming methodology or programming paradigm. So let us see what is a program. We are writing programs. In the last year, we have learned how to write program. What is a program? A program is set of instructions given to computer for performing a particular task. So for writing programs, we use programming languages. We use programming languages for writing programs. By writing a group or set of instructions, and after giving that instructions to the computer will execute these instructions, and as a result of execution of these instructions, it will perform some task. We will get some results or outputs. So there are programming languages. We know there are low level or machine level programming language, or the language which is difficult to learn, difficult to program, but the computer can directly or easily recognize that language. That is called the low level or machine level language. We have middle level language like assembly level languages, and we use high level language which uses some English words and usually used mathematical notations for writing programs. Such programming languages are called high-level programming languages. C is an example for high-level programming language. C++, Java, Basic, COBOL, Fortran, Smalltalk, Delphi. All these are programming languages. So a programming language is used for writing programs. Now, when the programs becomes, or the problem to be solved becomes very large and very complex, we have to think about some special easy ways to organize the program. There comes the term programming paradigm. Programming paradigm. The word programming paradigm or paradigm indicates the way of organizing a program. The method of organizing a program is called programming paradigm. There are different approaches. If the problem to be solved using computer is a smaller one, there is no need of programming paradigm or programming different approaches of programming and all. But when the program becomes larger, more complex, we have to think about programming paradigms. How the problem is to be solved. There are different approaches like modular programming, in which the program is divided into different modules. If a big problem, say let this be the problem to be solved, we divide it into P1, P2, P3, etc., Pn. It is divided into different programming modules, and these programs are separately solved then combined together. So we are dividing in that approach. These are the different approaches used for problem solving. In that approach, in modular approach, we are dividing the larger problem into different modules and solving. Then there is structured programming, in which we are using functions and function calls for solving a problem. Then top-down modular approaching. Again, the larger problem is divided into sub-problems. Larger problem is divided into some sub-problems. This is the problem 1. This is divided into S1, S2 and S3. And this S1 is again divided into some 2 parts. This S2 is again divided. This is again divided. This S2 is again divided. In this way, from the top to bottom, if we are making some approach, in this type of approach, it is called the top-down programming approach. And there is bottom-up. Instead of coming from top to bottom, we are moving from bottom to up. Such an approach is called the bottom-up approach. Here in this chapter, we are going to discuss about 2 different important programming paradigms. One is called POP. In order to explain the advantages or the features or the merits of object-oriented programming, we want to see the previously used programming approach, which is called procedure-oriented programming. Paradigm. Procedure-oriented programming paradigm. In this programming paradigm, this is the previously used one. Importance is given to the steps involved in program, which means it deals with how the problem is to be solved, not taking care of the data, its security, etc. Let us see the points one by one. What are the important features of procedure-oriented programming? Sometimes you may ask, what are the features of procedure-oriented programming? What are the demerits of procedure-oriented programming? Or write a note on procedure-oriented programming. Let us see what are the important points in procedure-oriented programming. So here, in procedure-oriented programming approach, or simply POP, it specifies a series of well-structured steps and procedures to make a program. So in a procedure-oriented programming, if we solve a larger problem or a program in procedure-oriented programming methodology, it simply writes a series of steps, instruction by instruction, to solve the problem, or it contains the POP follows writing instruction by instruction to solve the problem. So it specifies a series of well-structured steps and procedures to make a program. This is the first thing about POP. Then the second one, it uses a series of instructions. Instructions are written, or programming code is written one after another. Then importance is given to doing things. The other part is importance is not given to the safety of data. So importance is given to doing things. It emphasize on, or it gives importance to solve the problem than making the data secure and all. So importance is given to doing things. Then the fourth point is data is undervalued. So while giving importance to how to solve the problem, how to find a solution for the problem, data is undervalued. Data has no security or less security, which means any data, usually the global variables and all, any section of the program can alter this data. So there is chance for knowingly or unknowingly alter the content of some variables. It will affect the entire program, or the program development becomes tedious. Adding a new element in program requires code rewriting. This is one of the drawbacks or demerits of procedure-oriented program. What does it mean? Suppose we have written a program, we have completed the work, it is being executed and it is successful. Later we find that adding some new data will make the program a little more perfect. And suppose we are trying to add this new data, what happens is we have to rewrite the entire functions in the program or the code in the program which uses the newly added data, or which is supposed to use the newly added data. So this process is very difficult process. Then creating new data type is difficult. We know that in programming languages there are different data types, fundamental or basic data types. In C++ we have integer, float, char, etc., character, etc. Derived data types like arrays, user-defined data type like structures and classes. Here, a language which uses procedure-oriented programming, or if you are following this procedure-oriented programming methodology or programming paradigm, in such cases, in such programs, creating new data types is difficult. So a programming language that follows procedure-oriented programming has or lacks extensibility. No extensibility. No extensibility. So POP has no extensibility, which means we cannot create new data types, or we can create but it is difficult. Lot of coding requires for creating such data types. And the final point is poor real world modeling. This is the comparison with the object-oriented programming. In object-oriented programming, it is possible to model the real-world scenario easily. In real world, suppose we are considering a car. We are modeling a car. A car has its properties or characteristics like color of the car, size of the car, length of the car, capacity of the car, number of wheels, cc, all these things. And it has functions, it has behavior like acceleration, its what we call braking power, then speed, all these things. So in object-oriented programming, these two things are binded together. But so that real life modeling, real world modeling is possible. Here it is not possible. It is very difficult. It is not possible. So these are the, either we can say these are the features, or we can say these are the demerits of procedure oriented programming. In a nutshell, we can say it gives importance to doing things. Data is undervalued. It emphasizes on a series of instructions. Adding new data type is difficult. Adding new element in the program or adding a new variable in the program will require program rewriting for proper working of this program after making such alterations, and poor real world modeling. Now we shall see the features of important features of object oriented programming. Here, object oriented programming, OOP, OOP. This is the programming methodology nowadays we are using. Its features are, or the advantages of object oriented programming over procedure oriented programming are: program written based on objects. This is the main difference between POP and OOP. In object oriented programming, programs are written based on objects. What are objects? Objects are actually the real-time, real-world modeling of things. Objects clubs data and functions. As we seen earlier, if you take example of a bird has its size, its length of wings, length of beak, its color, all these things. Its behaviors are: it can fly, it can chirp, it can make sound. All these are behaviors. So these things in program, such scenario can be easily made with the help of objects. So objects are a way to club data and functions. This data means its properties, its size, its color, etc. Function means its behavior: it can fly, it can make sound, etc. Then provides clear modular structure for programs. It is in object-oriented programming methodology or object-oriented programming paradigm. We can compartmentalize larger programs, or we can divide a larger program into subprograms, and those subprograms can be easily solved and combined together. So provides clear modular structure for a program. Then easy to maintain and modify codes. We have seen in the case of procedure-oriented programming, it has the demerit, it has the limitation that if you add a new data item or add a new variable, we need to rewrite the entire code where this data or this variable is to be used. But here, this supports, object-oriented programming supports code reusability, or easy to maintain and modify codes, which means no need of such entire modification of codes. Then here comes, can define new data types. We can easily create our own data types, or we can create, or programmer can create his own data type as per his requirements. And good real world modeling. In the case of POP, it was poor real world modeling. Here, good real world modeling is possible. So these are the differences between POP and OOP. POP, usually You may ask, students may ask in examination, for examination, what are the, compare POP and OOP, or sometimes what are the features or what are the demerits of POP or what are the advantages of OOP. So POP stands for procedure oriented programming. In that programming paradigm or in that methodology of programming or way of organizing program, importance is given to doing the task. Importance is not given to the data and its safety or the security of data. If we make any change in the data items in the program, the programmer need to check the entire code and make alteration in the code where this newly added data type is to be used or accessed. Then creating new data type, new user defined data type and all are difficult to, or real world modeling is not possible or very difficult. These are the features of procedure oriented programming. In object oriented programming, these issues are overcome by using a new concept called object. So in object oriented programming, the programming is purely based on or oriented on objects. And object is actually a real world model that has properties and behaviors. The properties are represented by data and behaviors are represented by functions. Now, real world modeling is very easy. It supports code reusability. New data types can be easily created. All these are the features of object-oriented programming. Now, a global variable. What is a global variable? A variable that is accessible in the entire program, available in the entire program. Its scope is in the entire program. Such a variable is called a global variable. Now we have C language. We have Pascal. We have Fortran. These languages are examples for procedural oriented programming languages, POP languages. We have C++. We can write object oriented programs as well as procedure oriented programs in C++. Java is a true object oriented programming language. We can write object oriented programs only in Java. So Java is a true object oriented programming language. In C++, we can write POP programs as well as OP programs. C, Pascal, Fortran, etc. we can write only POP programs. So that's for this session. Thank you.